Hello, everyone. I am trying to come up with something to suggest to some people who are sort of learning how to use vintage fountain pens in their calligraphy. And I realized that these suggestions I give are not always going to work for everybody, but I think that this particular one that I'm going to suggest, I think we could all maybe benefit from it if I can figure out how to convey what I want to convey. One of my new pen pals was shocked and alarmed and not dismayed, but about the fact that I said I had 3,000 fountain pens. And he thought his 5 were maybe too many. And I said, well, I could probably hone my collection down to maybe 100 pens that I would draw with, and maybe 100 pens that I would do calligraphy with, and I could probably survive with that variety. I probably could survive with many fewer, but it's really fun seeing the difference of how each of these pen nibs makes me want to draw or write differently from each other. One of the things I do is I don't, because in my career of doing calligraphy and illustrations and things like that, I draw in many different styles. And sometimes I draw very tightly and exactly with lots of details. Sometimes I draw very quick and sketchy with sort of more of a emotion or gestural aspect to the drawings, and each of those kinds of drawings works differently when I use a different pen. I could move my hand exactly in the same way with this pen and this pen and come up with two drawings that look very different because of the variety of the nib. But also, so anyway, here's what I'm trying to suggest. So this pen, for example, is a pen that has sort of I'm trying not to put too much pressure down. It has like sort of a wide downstroke and a not so wide side stroke. And this is sort of without applying any pressure. But when I do apply pressure, the downstroke becomes fatter and the side stroke, remains the same as it was before. But the downstroke, I'm able to do more variety on the downstroke. This pen also makes me want to write. I don't know why it's doing this, but it makes me want to write more vertically, like this, rather than like this. And I don't know why it's doing that, but it is. It's telling me that it wants to do this sort of up and down. Maybe it's because it reminds me of a slightly stub nib, which makes me also want to write up and down like that. It's very slight, though. It's a very subtle thing. So this pen sort of is directing me to do this rather than this. Let's see what this one is going to try to tell me to do. This one doesn't seem all that different. Well, it does, come to think of it. Yeah, it's fine on the downstroke, fine on the side stroke. They're almost even. And this one, because of the shape of the nib, maybe it prefers this kind of writing. Makes me want to do this. Now I can do this, but because of the shape of the nib, it's a little harder for me. The nib wants to sort of slide to side, whereas this one doesn't. This one sort of wants to go vertical, and it's telling me that it likes that. And I have no willpower of my own. I let the pens tell me what to do. So, for example, if you and you and you and you and you have 3 different pens, try this experiment. Write, the quick brown fox, the quick, whatever it is, on the slant, like you're supposed to when you're doing script, but also try it vertically, the quick, and see how, chances are your pen is going to want to do either this or this more. Your hand will feel, you'll feel the feedback that the pen is giving you, and it's going to presumably prefer one to the other. Now maybe it likes them both. Who knows? This one, let's see what this one wants me to do. This is a very, very fine nib. And this pen doesn't mind going in any different direction. What does it want me to do? I haven't figured this one out. This one is a very, very fine nib, and the pen itself is very long and very slender and very lightweight. And it sort of wants me, or I feel like I want to write kind of small. Very, very weird. These pens are so interesting. I really don't know what this is telling me to do, other than it really likes to be used gently. It sort of wants to write. I should have filled these up. I'm just dipping them in. It sort of wants to write very, very finely without hardly any pressure, but it doesn't mind being pressed, every once in a while it can have a louder, thicker line. If this pen nib were in a heavier pen, a pen that maybe is slightly fatter and slightly heavier, it would make me want to write differently. I'm almost positive, even though it would be the same exact nib. This one, I wrote with this one the other day. This one is very, very fine, very slightly flexible, similar to the one I just used. You can hear the sound it's making, though. It's a very different. I don't know what that one's telling me to do. These are so, they're so different. These pens are so different from each other. It's really, really nice, big, flexible, rubbery nib on this one. Sort of likes to be, this one likes a little tiny bit of abuse. It likes to, have every descender be a thick stroke. I think it wants to be kind of vertical as well, though not sure. Gosh. Here I don't think I'm making any sense. I had all sorts of bright ideas in my head before I sat down to do this, and now they're all going away. But here's something that I think all of you can benefit from. Take any pen you're using and write the same sentence. Just keep the words the same, but change everything else. So write, the quick brown fox, with a slant. Write the same thing vertically. Even if you don't normally write that way, try it out. See how it feels. The pen, you might immediately sense that the pen prefers this over this or this over that. Another thing to do is write twice as large as you normally write. Take up more space, both vertically and horizontally. Because what you'll learn by doing this is by giving you more room in your line. If I was going to make a lowercase l, loop, like that. If I write this big, loop, or this big, or this big, there's more space here, obviously, than here, for me to step on the gas and make the line get thicker. And it can go more gradually. If I want it to be this thick here, I really have to press down a lot earlier, and there's not really a lot of room for me to think of it as a airplane trying to land on a runway. You really need, the more runway you have, the more time you have to speed up, to take off, or slow down to stop. Writing twice as big or 3 times as big is a nice exercise. And you'll end up, when you write larger, you'll probably end up using your arm rather than your fingers. Here I can, you're using your arm the entire time is good to learn how to do that. It's not easy, but it's a good skill to learn. If you're just using your fingers, you really can't write all that big, because you then have to move your hand too much, and it's not very good. So moving your whole arm, where your hand and the pen stay the same relationship to each other, the lines are going to remain parallel. If I do this, if I write small with just my fingers, right now I can't. It really hurts for me to try to be parallel. So then I have to move my hand, and then I have to sort of start over again. So using more of your arm keeps your lines straight. So anyway, try, your normal tilted vertical. You can also try a back hand. Sometimes that is fun to do. All of these are sort of little exercises you can do to get your hand moved around, but also, I think more importantly, is to have a sense of what the pen likes, how the pen likes to write. With an old pen like these that I use, this could have been used every day for 50 years by someone, and they might have been a lefty, and they might have written this way. And the iridium, which is very hard, it doesn't wear down very quickly, but it does wear a little bit. So there might be a sweet spot. If I was a left-handed person, it would write perfectly. And because I'm right-handed, and the shape of the nib now is sort of changed by the previous owner, it may feel scratchy. So that's what I would suggest. So try different angles, try different sizes. You can also try different alphabets, if you're studying calligraphy or trying to get better penmanship, you might try a couple of different calligraphic styles. There's the kind that's very rounded. There's another one that's sort of very angular, where there's a point here rather than a loop. Maybe you write this way and not that way, or this way and not that way, but try them both, because the pen will probably prefer one to the other. Again, the main part of this is to see what the pen likes, not what you want, but what the pen wants. And the pen may really, really like vertical, angular lettering. It may just feel perfect, whereas another one might want slanted lettering with big. Some might want a light touch. Some might want a heavy hand. All of them sort of want something, and almost every pen doesn't want something. And if your handwriting is what it doesn't want, it's never going to want it. If you press down really, really hard all the time, a really, really fine, flexible nib isn't going to like that. If you apply a very light touch, there are some pens that don't work very well with a very light touch. They really need to have a heavy hand to make them work well. So anyway, there's a lot. They're all so different. I don't wish they weren't. It would be easy for me to describe if there were only 10 kinds of pen nibs in the world, but there are hundreds and hundreds and thousands of different types. So good luck.